Hi, this is Garrett Vandenberg, and welcome to the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Thank you, Garrett. This is Devin Francis, aka Leonard Meltzner.
And this is Victoria Francis, aka myself.
And you're watching the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. It's that time of year again. It's interview season.
I thought you were going to say it's June.
Yes. When the flowers of Skype fall from the skies of long-distance relationships to answer the questions that we have for other people.
What?
And then we bring it to you as we pollinate your minds with information.
Carry on.
For those of you who don't know who Gannon...
Gannon?
Who Ganondorf is.
I don't know who Gannon is. Please
For those of
explain.
you who don't know who Ganondorf is, this is going to be a Legend of Zelda Let's Play.
I know who Ganondorf is. I don't know who Ganon is.
Okay.
Carry on with the proper name. For those of you who don't know who Garrett Vandenberg is...
You're going to find out in just a moment because he's going to tell you himself. He does all sorts of things for the Ceiling Fan, for the Scoopcast, for Blimey Cow, and other things out there, but we'll let him get into more detail with that. Yes, it's exciting. This is our third episode now. First we interviewed Austin and Tasha of the Adventures in Odyssey blogcast.
Not our third episode, our third interview episode.
Yes. And then Arya Noel Curzon, voice of Mandy Strasberg. And now we have Garrett. We are hoping to do our next interview sooner than later, so be on the lookout. But until then, you'll just have to suffice for this. And so here we go. And we are back here, Devin and Victoria, and we're here with our very special guest today, who is...
Garrett Vandenberg.
Yes. Garrett, do you want to tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Hi. My name is Garrett Vandenberg.
Hi, Garrett.
Hi, Garrett.
Hey, guys. I am a professional mercenary. I am paid to kill off video game characters, or at least the people that Nintendo and other companies base video game characters off of, so that they don't sue for the rights.
Yeah, for the you know, any resemblance between real people
the actual guy
living or
Mario,
fictional.
I killed him because he was going to sue Nintendo, and then they lost the rights to the game.
Well, he was a plumber, right? I mean, it couldn't have been that hard.
Right? Yeah, it wasn't that difficult.
What's going on?
So what I actually do is I'm currently in Bible school right now over in North Carolina, but my sort of occupation, I guess, I have a website called GarrettVandenberg.com, which is where I do most of my music stuff. And I write music for YouTube videos, for other types of like dramas and stuff. Obviously, the Ceiling Fan, co-hosted and been on various podcasts, including the Ceiling Fan, the Odyssey Scoopcast, and I've done just various projects with Josh Taylor from Blimey Cow. I'm not sure which ones. I forget all the stuff we've done, but we've done a bunch of different things. So yeah, just a lot. My two main, as far as media guys that I work with, are Josh Taylor and Kevin McCreary, and I think I've done a little bit of stuff even for the official podcast, but not a ton. And also, if you're a subscriber of the what's the online AIOO, because they have like the episodes you can only listen if you're
Odyssey Adventure Club.
Yeah, if you listen to that, all the things at the beginning where they're like,
those are you.
Well, the music, I did the music for that.
Devin is ranting about
every single Adventure
podcast.
Club episode that we've reviewed for the podcast, we've like every single time we talk about how much we love those intros at the beginning and the music, and how like finally we have like some music that actually sounds like really good and current sounding music.
Yeah, so I made that stuff for them.
That's cool. What else do you do?
Can you make it sound like Connie's like murdering Eugene or something like that for a future one as a joke?
Oh, wait, that would, like in the music, you want me to try to express that?
Yes.
In music is, could speak 1,000 words. But
interpretive auditory dance kind of thing.
like, if people are going into it already thinking about, Connie murdering Eugene, then they might get, I could write a piece that might envelop that story. But if that's not at all what they're thinking, I can't really say Connie is murdering Eugene just with the instruments.
Well, I guess that's your challenge.
Okay.
You could try and figure out
Think on
the
that.
note letters to use to spell the words.
Right.
And then if they're
Yeah.
smart enough, they'll figure it out.
Those wonderful notes like O and N and I.
Yeah, but okay, so I do all that. I also have a few of my own music projects. I have a sort of an indie rock band that I do while I'm in Canada called the Barefoot Penny Loafers. I have an EDM, which is electronic dance music name. I wouldn't call it a band because it's just me, but I make some EDM music under the name BtnMshr. And so I released an EP under that name recently. I also have a hardcore band called Elizabeth Crim that I do with some of my buddies in North Carolina. And I also grew up traveling, playing music with my family, and until I was 18 years old, my mom had been traveling for quite a few years before that, and kind of just had a couple generations of musicians traveling around, doing like traveling music ministry. And so my parents still do ministry and play music under the name New Generation Ministry. So yeah, now I'm just in North Carolina, going to Bible school and making music, doing whatever I can.
Very cool. Perfect. So, we'll start out with some Odyssey-related questions and then veer into more Garrett-related questions. So there's some pretty obligatory Odyssey fan questions asked right at the beginning. I think the first one is how you first started with Adventures in Odyssey.
Sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I obviously just grew up listening to it with my family, but I'm pretty sure we discovered it through some friends of ours, and every time we would go to their house, it was exciting to us because we always got to lend a different pack of cassettes from them. So that we didn't buy them for the first while. We would always just borrow Odyssey packs from our friends, and then eventually it became like the birthday thing. So every time somebody had a birthday or it was Christmas, somebody would end up getting a volume of Adventures in Odyssey. So it was just kind of it became a family thing. And then eventually, when they started coming out on, I think it was ChristianAudio.com, I went through and just completed my collection by buying them all digitally. So now I've got all of it sitting on my hard drive, and I listen to. Well, I don't listen to it all the time anymore, but it's good to have there because I still like to listen to it.
Yeah.
I love it when people say they grew up listening to Odyssey cassettes for the first while, because that's what we did.
Yeah.
For all the people who still actually know what those are.
Right. Well,
now even CDs are being phased out now.
We're going to make a song with McAllister Park about how only real Odyssey fans listen through cassettes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a line on the Ceiling Fan, wasn't there, about like how Phil made Ethan a mixtape. He's like, "What's a tape?" He's like, "It's like a CD," and he's like, "What's a CD?" I was like, "Now that's what makes you feel old."
Yeah. Well, Relient K had a song called "No One Knows What Vinyl Is." I think it was called "The Vinyl Countdown." But it was about how just nobody even knew what vinyl was. But the song was outdated by the time they put it out because they referenced burning songs to CDs, and nobody even has CDs anymore. But anyway, so yeah, I grew up listening to Odyssey and heard about it through some friends.
All right. So, favorite episode ever?
Ooh. See, this would have been nice to have in advance to think about because...
Well, that's why I have to put you on the spot. I like to see the gear turn.
Actually, I've got to say it's probably Snow Day, because that episode, as well as Broken Window, that cassette, I would sit there and listen to it all day sometimes. I would just flip it over, because it was Snow Day and Broken Window were on the same cassette. And that was just my favorite one. I would listen to it. Like, when I was like 6 years old, I had my own Walkman cassette player.
Yeah.
I would just throw my headphones on, and that was my afternoon every day for months on end. Like with my family, we had a lot of, because whenever we would get a new pack, especially during the Novacom era, we were making sure that we didn't, like nobody was allowed to listen to them until we all got into the van and would listen to them together. We were garage sailing. We would go garage sailing every Saturday morning, and it was like garage sailing and Odyssey. And we that's the way we went through the Novacom series. Is nobody was allowed to listen to it on their own. We all had to listen to it together and find out. So it was fun going through all that as a family.
That's a really nice kind of tradition.
Yeah.
Thing there. So, least favorite episode to make things slightly more controversial.
Okay. I don't want to pick a specific episode and say, this writer and producer and everybody involved in this episode is terrible. But I've even voiced a lot of the qualms I've had with the more recent episodes of Adventures in Odyssey. And I like some of them, but even just today I went through and listened to Wooten Knows Best, which was one of the episodes I liked more in the more recent episode. It is 54, yeah. And but I just listened through it and I was like, man, this just isn't as good as some of the stuff I grew up. So it was like, even the stuff that I like better out of some of the newer stuff doesn't seem to, and maybe it's just nostalgic, you know?
I think that's a big problem, the objectivity, especially when 51 first came out.
Right. Yeah, 51 is definitely my least favorite album.
Yeah, that's true.
Except Jubilee Singers hit it out of the park a million times over.
Yeah, that was
the other ones.
Yeah, actually, I did like that one, but the whole rest of the album was just
yeah.
The
music in the Jubilee Singers alone. Is
it was great. Although there was a few episodes. I mean, I didn't like 51 overall, but there was a few episodes in the music that was just specifically just really felt off. Like it just didn't seem to fit at all. Like emotionally, the music just entirely confused me about the scene. I was like, wait, so am I supposed to be sad about this? What? So yeah, I was not really a fan of 51 as a whole.
All right.
I mean, I understand, kind of why it was a little less power to it, because they were trying to, reboot everything, and they kind of just tried to reboot too much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's true. I can understand all of the reasons behind the way it was, how it was, but that still doesn't change the fact, looking at it objectively, that we have to say, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reason, but it's not necessarily an excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite character on Adventures in Odyssey?
Possibly. I mean, I really liked Wooten for a long time. Just, I feel like I can relate a lot to him, because I want to have a house that's ridiculous and crazy. Especially, I really wanted to have a house just like Wooten's when I was growing up. I mean, I'm still growing up, but when I was younger, I just loved the concept of having a slide going out of my house, and I had all these fantasies when I was younger about wanting to build some big, awesome, like it would have a playground and an arcade, and I would design all the video games myself, and there would be a pool, and I just had all these fantastical ideas when I was younger about this place, and then Wooten comes on Adventures in Odyssey and has this house that's almost exactly what I had in my head.
Yeah. I used to have pages of blueprints that I'd drawn for all sorts of different super cool house designs and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I really, really appreciated Wooten. I still like him, but I've liked kind of, obviously my favorite stage was kind of when he was more just being introduced.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he was, and then I really, really appreciated him even near the end of the original run, right at 50 even.
With Grady and his relationship with him.
That was just absolutely touching.
Yeah.
The father-son dynamic they had was really, really great.
I think his best moment since the reboot was in Life Expectancy, mainly when he was comforting Connie.
Yeah. I suddenly felt like a little bit of classic Wooten in there, and I'm hoping that it'll slowly make its way back in.
It felt like it was the first time his character was really grounded since the reboot, and not just comic relief.
Him as a character rather than comic relief.
Exactly, which is something that Victoria and I get very worked up about when characters are there solely for comic relief.
Right, let's not get into it. We could spend a couple hours just talking about Wooten.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I really like Wooten, as well as Eugene's hilarious. Yeah.
So, how would you say this show has influenced you spiritually? Generally, or in one specific fashion? If you want to answer that, you don't have to if you don't want to.
Give me a minute to think about it for a second, because, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with especially with my family, because, we all grew up listening together, and just it's opened up a lot of different conversations to talk about different things, and subjects that would have been harder to bring up. But, even like subjects like just dealing with death with friends or family, like with Karen dying, and different things like that. It was just like it's a good conversation starter, and definitely helped a lot of helped to have those, to open up those doors to have conversations with my family in places that we wouldn't necessarily have had before.
It's actually incredible sometimes, like the things I've talked to people about, like really serious things on a large spectrum, and in response to that, I'll say something where I'm basically literally quoting Odyssey on it, and they'll be like, yes, that's exactly
great advice.
How I feel.
Like, yeah, I'm quoting Mr. Whitaker.
Yeah, there was even one time I was talking to a friend about an experience they had, a brush with some demonic stuff, and I started talking about...
Sorry.
Okay. Do. Hello.
Sorry.
And we're back. Yeah, I was talking to a friend about a demonic experience they had, and I started talking about how they felt about it, and basically described the way Wit talked about it in Castles and Cauldrons, and they were like, they couldn't even put it into words until I said it like that, and they were like, that is exactly the perfect way to put it. So it's amazing how it can relate like that. It's a very powerful show, Adventures in Odyssey.
Definitely.
Okay, so slightly more tangential to the show now. How did you first become involved with the online community?
I think it was probably the TOO. That, like, I forget how I ended up finding it. If I was just probably through the Odyssey Scoop is the first place that I ended up finding these. That's how I discovered the Ceiling Fan, and then through it, I think I probably discovered the TOO because of Ethan mentioning it. And then be like, okay, well, maybe I should go check this out. So I joined the TOO and then started getting a little bit involved in the conversations and stuff there. And I think, well, I mean, eventually, obviously, I was administrating the when Jacob started his message board on the Odyssey Scoop for a while. I guess that was a little later on. But yeah, I guess where I really started getting involved with the community was through the TOO. And I just was mostly going around looking at the stuff that had to do with various AIOO podcasts, which is where I discovered, I forget what the name of it was, but the one with Tim and Steven.
Oh, is that the fake one that...
Heartcast?
Yeah, it's totally not fake, totally real.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the 100% legit, the Heartcast.
Legit, the most legit podcast there was.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're going to talk about Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah.
The cockroaches in us have survived. That's one of my favorite lines.
People really appreciated that because I wasn't a fan of that many of the other Odyssey podcasts.
Well, that's because we weren't around yet.
Exactly.
Obviously.
But I felt like they just made fun of them so well. And the best part was I didn't actually realize it was just Kevin and I mean, it's not Kevin and Lauren, but I didn't realize that it was just Kevin and Lauren for in the entire episodes until after they told me. I thought because I was like, well, it's just another Odyssey podcast that isn't very good. And I mean, no offense to any of the podcasts that were going at that point, but just the satire to it was so good.
Yes, you definitely appreciate that. I mean, that was the thing behind when we first started the Oddcast. Victoria kept on telling me, I was saying, there are, 500 different Odyssey blogs and podcasts out there. What makes you think, we can do anything that's anything different than every single other one out there?
Literally from, probably about 7 years or something like that, I've been trying to convince him to start up a podcast with me.
So
that is not... exaggeration.
Wait, nobody's doing video podcasts. Why don't we go start a vlogcast?
I'd like to think that what we've done with the Oddcast is broken the mold of what Odyssey podcasts usually are. Especially with, the what ifs and the headcanon videos, the discussions.
Kevin and I have discussed a lot about, what it takes for to do anything that's really successful, just for marketing in general. If you're going to make any sort of product, you either have to do something that's entirely new or do something that somebody else has done, but do it better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, with the Ceiling Fan, I feel like you did something that was totally new, and it did great. I mean, obviously it's not an incredibly huge following, but the fan base that it has developed is, I think, substantial, and the fans, they're really great fans. Like, they stick around even though he takes 6 months to put out an episode.
I'm super obsessed with it. Like, I listen to it like all the time.
Victoria's probably listened to every episode like 20 times.
Yeah, more than that.
I've listened. I was the same way when I was listening to it at first, and you know, I'm going to actually go through and listen to it pretty soon because we got to put out the final 2 episodes, which are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, every single time you guys put out an episode, I'm like, I have to start from episode 1 again. So.
Because it's like, you have enough time anyways. But yeah, I'm super excited about those final 2. And they're not the final, but the final of this season. And then we're thinking we'll probably continue, but at least probably on a smaller scale.
Than the crazy story arcing.
Yeah. It's deviated a little bit from what the show started out as.
It's slightly different than the first episode, yes.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to get a little bit more back into that style, where it's more just like Ethan doing his podcast. Because for the last 3 seasons, it's been the Ceiling Fan podcast, but it hasn't been Ethan's Ceiling Fan podcast, like him podcasting. It's been more of like a radio drama.
It's been a podcast about Ethan's podcast. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So we want to get back into it being Ethan's podcast.
It's so funny because I always talk about it at school to my friends, and then I'm always saying, like, it's like a fan podcast that has its own storyline, and I'm so bad at explaining how it works.
It's a podcast about a fan podcast about a show.
Yeah, I'm like, it's a fan podcast, but the fan who does the podcast isn't actually a real person. He's a fan himself who plays a fan. And I'm like, also, he's his own manager playing himself. And then they're just like, what? And I'm like, never mind.
Just to listen to it.
So, from then on, with the Scoopcast and the TOO, how did you first meet Kevin and become involved with the Ceiling Fan?
Actually, yeah, the first message I had with Kevin was through the TOO. I private messaged him and said, hey, dude, I really love your show. I didn't think he would answer because at that time I thought he was like super famous and like didn't talk to his fans. But since then, you know, he responded to me almost overnight, and I found out he's one of the coolest dudes ever, and he's really, really great to all of his fans. And like, you know, people email him all the time, but like he takes hours out of his day every day writing to kids and helping them, you know, get going with their podcasts and suggesting hardware for them. I mean, obviously, and then he started the inner tube out of that, you know, because so many people are asking him about different things like that. So it just seemed like a good way to be able to reference and say, hey, you can go check this out. But yes, I got to know Kevin through the TOO, and then, you know, I was like, hey, dude, I think it's super awesome. And then I showed him some of the music I had worked, and I also sent him two skits that I made on using just Audacity, but kind of similar to the style of the Ceiling Fan. So then he, from there, had me produce an episode of the Ceiling Fan that didn't ever air until like a year later. But actually, no.
It was the Harvest Fest.
Harvest Fest, yeah.
That one's still one of my favorites, just like the lines in it. And it's just like, you keep on screaming about that Mitch boy stealing your girl. And it's like, Mom!
That was
the one that I wrote. I wrote an entire episode, and I was just like, hey, dude, I wrote this episode. Why don't we put it out because it's Halloween time? And he's like, yeah, why don't we do it? But it was kind of right. He was going through some difficulties in his own life and didn't have a whole lot of time to get it together. And so we didn't get it done in time for Halloween, I don't think. But then he also felt, I think, because it was a Halloween episode rather than like a harvest thing, I think I'm not exactly sure if this is right. I forget a little bit about the story, but I think he was saying that it might be, for some of the fans, they might have problems with it being a Halloween episode. So we just kind of postponed it, and he wrote another one really quick about the Harvest Festival. And then, obviously, that was the one that we ended up putting out with Ethan and Phil talking about, you know, Ethan's dressing up as a turkey or something. I forget actually how that episode happened.
That's one of my favorite episodes of the podcast.
It's still pretty funny. I enjoyed it. So I produced that one, even though I didn't get to write that one. But I still fully produced the other one, and then he released it a year later.
So
what was the question?
How did you meet Kevin?
How you started with the ceiling fan.
Yeah.
So you answered that. So
that's how I started with the ceiling fan.
So from there, you also moved on to the Scoopcast. I remember when that.
Right. Yeah, that kind of just rooted out of Jacob and I became pretty close friends. Would Skype often, and he's like, you should just go co-host on the Scoopcast because you're awesome. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I am. So we should do this.
I remember.
So I convinced Kevin to well, it was kind of a combination of Jacob saying, it's my podcast, I get to decide what happens with it. And Kevin's like, all right, whatever. So, but then Kevin and I found out that we actually had fun podcasting together. So we started mostly just kind of doing the interviews together because it's nicer to have a little wider conversation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it just kind of became something that was fun to do. The Scoopcast was never really a serious, we got to make sure we finish things and do deadlines. It was more of just this is our podcast, so we can actually do real podcast stuff.
Yeah.
Because we can't do that on the ceiling fan.
That's not like the Oddcast where we're very serious about our broadcasting dates and sticking to when episodes come out.
We're never late.
Yeah, speaking of the episode I have to edit now, is that the March episode I have to send out?
I don't know.
Since I just put out like 4 episodes in the last couple weeks, before we were like stuck in February, yeah. And it's June tomorrow. We're very, very on top of things.
Oh, definitely.
And it's funny because I remember back around that time, or I guess it was right when you first started on the ceiling fan that I first met you, because it was when you first got into when you first appeared on the ceiling fan and you became like friends with kind of the Odyssey community on Facebook, and you messaged me out of the blue because you saw that I was also mutual friends with all these same Odyssey people that you were mutual friends with now, and so you're kind of wondering what my connection was with the show and stuff, and that was the first time.
Are you a stalker? Let me know.
I was like, no, I'm just someone. I have absolutely no connection with the show. So then, in the coming months, what can Ceiling Fan fans be looking forward to?
In the coming months and or years, depending on how long it takes.
Decades. Sometime before the rapture, hopefully.
Maybe. I mean, no man knows. Not even the sun.
No.
Man.
It would be awkward if
the man in the sun or the man in the moon.
It would be awkward if the rapture suddenly happened before we could finish this interview, because then no one would even hear this.
We won't know the exact hour.
That means we could say literally anything right now, and no one would know about it.
Still waiting on the Ezekiel 38 war, but that's another episode for another time.
You could have it.
It's a very long episode, which is not going to happen because we don't need that much anon-hate from other denominations.
So yes, in the coming months, obviously we'll be putting out the final 2 or 3 episodes of this big story arc that we've done with the Ceiling Fan, which I'm really, really pumped about. We spent a lot of time really refining the script and making sure it's super awesome and is satisfying for all the fans that have been listening for 3 freaking years. So I'm pretty excited about it. That's probably the extent of what will happen in the next couple of months. Obviously, afterwards, I had mentioned we're going to try to get back into doing a little bit more simplified, actually Ethan's podcast, Ceiling Fan episodes, where it'll be a little more classic feel. We have a lot of different new people helping us out with the show. We've got new people helping out writing. It's kind of been this generational thing where just different people get in contact with Kevin, and then afterwards, when they grow up and they get into college, they kind of move on. I mean, I'm not going to move on from the show. I'll probably continue to do music for it, and various voices, depending on what's going on. Actually, I probably won't be doing as much music in the future because it is a pretty time-consuming thing. Mm-hmm. And also we have some new people helping out with that stuff. I don't know. I think the most recent episode was scored by, I forget her name, but we've got a few new fans that have kind of joined the crew. So she'll probably be taking over the music in the future. But I'll be scoring the final 2 episodes of season 5. Or is it season 5? Season 4?
Season 4.
Right. Yeah.
Season 4. Okay, I was thinking season 5 because it feels like season 4 started 2 years ago. It probably did.
It probably did.
I feel so bad because I've listened to every episode. I know this is going to sound really creepy. I'm sorry. Probably about like I don't even know how many times. And then every single time I listen to Good Things, and it's after, like, I've listened to that episode, like, 50 times in a row in one day, I'm just like, I'm like, I feel so bad, but I don't want to stop. And then there's always these small moments in a couple episodes. Yes, I love your music so much. And I, like, go in the car and I start singing it, and then I'm like, guys, you have to listen to the music that Garrett wrote, and they're like, go away. And so
you're such supportive friends, Victoria.
So I guess I'm probably a pretty big fan of the hardcore album I put out recently with my friends.
So like sometimes there's these small like lines, even in the short where you and Lauren were walking around during Ethan's rap battle. Where I'm just like, these small moments where I'm like, I don't know who's talking. I've listened to this episode like 50 times and I can't tell. And I'm like, I feel so bad.
I pointed out to you if you wanted.
Okay.
Get a transcript and say, this line's me, this is Lauren.
Do you ever get mixed up when you listen to the episodes? You're like, is that me or is that Lauren?
Who am I? Who am I?
Not so much, no. I don't even think Lauren and I sound similar. Okay. I don't understand why people think we sound so much alike.
I love that one line where it's just like, no, I'm like more Canadian and I come more out of like the left speaker.
We got pretty self-aware in that episode. Like, that's the one thing I really love about the Ceiling Fan is that it's not supposed to be professional. We've got decent quality production, but as far as the scripts, most of our jokes are just making fun of ourselves. Which is what makes the show so much fun. It's like we're not trying to set up these elaborate jokes. It's just like
you don't have to be really pretentious about it.
Look at us. We're terrible at making shows. Let's laugh together at how terrible we are.
So, while you were Farron, you wrote a rather controversial song about Mr. Robert Mitchell.
I liked that song, for the record. I don't really like Mitch that much. Like, I like him as a character. I don't really support him and Connie nowadays, but I really, really like that song. And Devin does not as much.
Mitch Connie, yay or nay from Garrett Vandenberg?
Nay.
That's what I was saying. Devin was saying, like, yay or nay. I'm like, he said in an episode that he would never write a song about that to Kurt. He said that explicitly.
But I was saying, is that Garrett or is that Aaron, though? We have to clarify for the fans.
Looking back on them, I can see that relationship would have never worked.
Yeah.
Like, even back when it was all romantic between them, it was like Mitch was just wanted to go off and have this secret agency life, and Connie just was following along because she liked him, but it really wasn't her thing.
Yeah.
And, especially when he came back in, which album was it?
55. Something old, something new.
Yeah. It was... he was such a jerk.
I think that Connie did take, like, it was a constructive relationship for what it was, and Connie did grow as a person from it, but it's clear that
great as far as character development and even plot, but it was just, it didn't seem like
it was clear that things were not meant to work out between them. And just like you said, Connie said for herself in Something Blue that the relationship had been 90% action adventure and 10% rom-com.
Yeah.
And she likes rom-com.
And Mitch likes action adventure.
Yeah.
So.
I loved the whole lead up to how Farron was writing that song. Also, like, the thing with the blender at the beginning of the episode, I've always been curious about that, because he's, like, taking apart a blender, and, like, Ethan walks up and he's like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I'm, nothing. I was always thinking, like, is he building a gun? Yeah. And I'm like, no, he got his gun from, like, Walmart.
Just to throw people off, because there's no real significance. He was just taking apart a blender.
Like, I wondered, like, if he was, like, taking the blades just in case he lost his gun or something, or...
Nope, he was just taking apart a blender.
Have you never recreationally taken apart a blender, Victoria?
Peeling bananas or something that people would actually do originally in the script, and I came in and changed it, and I was like, make him taking apart a blender. Kevin's like... Oh, okay.
Now Ethan will never be able to enjoy his smoothies. I'm so diabolical.
Can't make milkshakes anymore.
No Wad Fam Jock Sods ever again.
Darn you, Farron.
Yeah, that's the real secret plan. It's just, we can't have Wad Fam Chalk Sods. Forget about the whole plot with Ethan's voice being needed by StarCorp. That's the real evil in this season.
So, as our final Odyssey-related question, unless I think of something else, so from our friendship together, I've seen that you're someone who I would like to think, the same as myself at least, has a very good ability to critique media, both Christian and secular, and kind of evaluate it on how it relates to our lives, and not just in the sense of like looking at like really conservative Christian material, but looking at all sorts of different things and being able to look at, you know, the depth and things behind it. So AIOO then, how do you think it lives up to that, especially the relevancy that it has to people of our age and older, not just as a kid's show?
I think we also have to look at it in segments, because as it's been running for so long, it's evolved into so many different shows. And I feel like each of them have their place. Personally, you know, certain eras of the show were more you know, profitable to me as far as life and learning and stuff. But even it's funny because the episodes that were more impactful to me, I wouldn't rate as high on the production side, because they were obviously some of the older stuff. But again, maybe part of that is just because I grew up listening to them. But I feel like each segment of the albums, you know, I don't care how you want to divide them up, they all have their intended audience, and I feel like they live up pretty well. Like even the more recent albums that I'm not as big of a fan of, they're doing incredibly well with their actual target audience, which is like 8 through 13, right? And it's, you know, it's never been more popular with their intended audience than it is now. So I still see the show doing incredibly well. It feels more like a kid's show to me, but that's because it is a kid's show now. I mean, it has been all the time, but it's especially doing so now. I feel like the production of the show is as good as it, you know, it's kind of improved through the years because it was figuring out what it was. And I still, more recently, I've been listening to a whole bunch of radio theater, and so good. But like, yeah, the production's always been like, I feel like Odyssey has been on top of it as far as anybody doing radio productions. I don't feel like there's anybody out there who's even on par with them. There are a few other radio productions that do a similar style, but nobody has the edge on production like Gap Digital and the people who work on Odyssey. It's just, it's unreal.
That's the thing that strikes me as I listen to, you know, other audio dramas, which I don't do a whole lot. I mean, that's not something I'm really, really into, but I do occasionally. And listening to other ones, I'm always just struck by, you know, how good Odyssey is in its production. And I think that's probably something that we all, you know, underappreciate because we've all been raised on it so long with such a high standard of audio production.
I think it was funny when your roommate, you got him to listen to The Mysterious Stranger. Yeah. And then there was like a knock at the door, or like the door at Wit's End opening in the first couple minutes. And then he actually like turned around in his seat because it was the first Odyssey episode he'd ever heard. So then he's just like looking and he's like, no one else is in the room, what's going on? And
yeah. Well, the thing is, you know, most people, when they hear about, you know, audio drama, they think of like an audiobook, which is grossly different from what audio drama is. Exactly. That's the same as like the difference between read it theater and watching a TV show. Right. Odyssey is like, I mean, I say, you know, it's like what people are like, how can you listen to that? So I'm like, it's like watching a TV show, but with your eyes closed. Like, I mean, how is it that different, really? But it makes up for it because the production and sound is a lot higher than a TV show. They put a lot more effort into making it sound like you're really there. Yeah, and you know, there's so many other advantages to a radio show over a TV show, but that's also another episode. For time. Ultimately, it's one of my favorite mediums because it's the fine line between reading a book and watching a movie. Because I feel like watching a movie it limits the imagination to some extent, where it's, you know, this is what this character looks like. Yeah. This is how tall he is. This is exactly the way he handles himself. Yeah. When you're reading a book, everything's up to your imagination, so everybody gets a different interpretation. I feel like radio is the perfect line between them because there are certain, you know, there are certain aspects of the show that are absolute, and then there's a lot of variability within that. So everybody, you know, knows what Connie and Mitch sound like. They know what Mr. Whitaker sounds like. And because they have
that much, they can actually hear his voice. They all get similar images in their heads, but, we still have a lot of room for imagination there.
Yeah.
And, because of the quality of the production, we still get similar pictures in our heads, but there's still all the visual side of it is happening inside the imagination.
So, moving on to your other non-Odyssey related projects, how did you first become involved with Blimy Cow and Messy Mondays?
Actually, that does come back to Odyssey, because I was going to the live show with Kevin, and we were going to go kind of cover.
I watched that video.
Yeah. So during that video, I don't think we have any footage of it, but I at that point I had only seen one Blimy Cow video, and I didn't even like it. I thought, wow, this is really Christian-y, and this is kind of cheesy, but I saw the audience for it, and a lot of the fans for the Ceiling Fan were talking about it. I was like, okay, I mean, it's cool that they have a show. They're kind of doing the YouTube thing, but with a Christian spin on it. But so then at the live show, I saw Jordan, and at first I thought he was actually you.
You complimented.
Like, that's one of those guys that I met online that I don't know in real life. But I don't know who it is. So I went up to him and I said, hey, do I know you from somewhere? And Jordan, being the troll that he is, said, no, you probably don't know me from anything. And then he just walked away. But later on, I made a friend there. Her name was Deborah, and she really liked them. And so she told me a little bit about Blimy Cow, and I was like, oh, wait, maybe I have. Okay, I have seen that. So that's who those guys are. So then I went over and I talked to them, and I introduced them to the Ceiling Fan, and they're like, no way, you're from the Ceiling Fan? I love that show. And the Scoopcast. You're Garrett Vandenberg. And I was like, yeah, I don't know who you are, though. So it's kind of funny, the fact that they had such a bigger audience than we did, but they knew more about us than we knew about them.
It'd be really funny if you walked up to Jordan, you're like, your hands are really red and you're very sarcastic. Do I know you? And he's just like, no.
Well, that was basically, I think he probably did it to a lot of people, just partially just because they didn't want to have crowds around them, but also just because he's a total troll.
I really loved the, was it the 100th episode when he's just like, oh, I'm dying. Well, you're not going to die if your hands aren't red. Oh, no. My hands are red. And it's like, they're making jokes about literally every single thing that are in the comment section, and that made me laugh so hard.
Yeah. Again, just because I really love self-aware humor.
Yeah, exactly. The satire that they do on there, I think, is so great and so instructional. And although, I get so worked up sometimes, I just can't go in the comment sections of their videos so many times before, because nobody in the comments understands the concept of satire.
Well, there's like the half of them that do, and they're all in there correcting the other guys that don't.
Either that, well, the problem is there's a lot of people that don't understand it, and there's the other people who understand it, but of course then they're going to be satirical too, and so they're trolling in the comments, and so it all looks the same. It all looks the same. You can't tell who's being doubly insincere.
The one episode where Jordan's just like, we're going to stop doing it because of people who are being negative. He released that messages right after, like the week after he was doing a Blimy Cow episode about not letting people's opinions affect what you do. And so then everyone's just like, oh no, and then I'm just like, in the comments, it was the first time I've ever written like a comment, I think, on a Blimy Cow video, other than like, congratulations on the 100th one. I'm like, please don't leave, and I was actually like so distraught for like the next couple days, and then I never caught on until some people in the comments are just like, you know they're kidding, right? And then I'm like, what? No. And it's so funny because I'm always aware of when they're trolling.
They still times will catch you off guard, and they'll be like, why did I not realize that they're lying? Because they're lying in every single episode.
When I showed lots of their videos to some of my friends at my church, they were just like, I showed them like one, and then they're like, this is super funny, and then they showed them another one, and they're like I showed them my friend the one about homeless people, and then they're saying like, oh, stay away from them because they're all scary and psychopaths, and she's like, well, that's not very nice, and then I'm like, they're being sarcastic, and she's just like, what? And then I showed her another one, and then she's like, I don't understand. I'm like, half the time they're sarcastic and half the time they're not. What you have to do is you have to figure out when they are being sarcastic and they're not.
If they're saying something offensive, it's probably sarcastic.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're saying what they really think and they're pretending that it's sarcasm so that way you won't be angry at them.
That's a great barrier, you know, great double bluff.
I've used that as well. Like, I'll be like, I hate you.
JK, but no, seriously.
I mean, I don't hate anybody. I'm a great Christian.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've used that. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've been complimented now that you confused me with Jordan Taylor.
Yeah.
So I'll take that away from today. So to come back to the satire, because I know for lots of other things too, I always have to remind people about, like, you know, literally the definition of satire is that you're parodying something in order to make a point for positive change about something. And one of the places where I had to make this argument a lot was on how to write a worship song in 5 minutes. Because there were a couple people who were very offended by that video, and, you know, someone who'd hate worship music and stuff, and I had to...
It inspired the most controversy, but also there was the most people that didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I liked that one.
That was
one of
like
my
a lot
favorites.
got offended, but I think I'm happy with the amount of conversation that happened, though, because it got people talking at least about it.
It got a lot of conversation, which I think is a really good thing. And I kept on going to the comments, and I'm like, no, guys, I know the guy who wrote this, and I know what his heart is for worship, and it's not what you seem to be thinking that it is.
It was kind of hard, though, because I had a lot of people, even on Facebook, coming in and telling me, like, yeah, that's right, bash all modern worship, it's all terrible. And I was like, no, that's not what I think. I think worship is fantastic, and you should, you know, use whatever music is really passionate on your heart towards God. I just think that you should really have passion behind it, not just writing music for the sake of writing music. And it's so I had several people on Facebook that I had pretty disturbing conversations with about that video, where I was like, man, is this what people think I'm saying? Because it was. Yeah, there's a lot of people that were just using the video to say, you know, all modern worship is terrible, we should only sing hymns. And I was like, I mean, hymns are great, but just because somebody's playing a style of music that you don't like, that's not reason to say that their music isn't worship.
Yeah.
So, I think it was good that it got people talking, but it also kind of, I felt like some people thought that I was backing up a position that I totally wasn't.
Yeah. It was. I could not believe the coverage that episode got when it came out. I mean, didn't it go hit #1 video on all of YouTube for a short while?
Maybe.
I think it came in like for that one day.
Maybe
it was like #1 most popular trending video on YouTube.
Possibly.
And there were all those articles.
Also, I just remember for like weeks after that, I would Google the name of the video and just hundreds of blogs sharing and writing about it. And I was like. It was neat, though, reading all the different people, their thoughts on it. Because, I mean, obviously this is the comment section, but people were actually writing, like, full-on reviews of the video and conversation. And it was cool, but also it was like, wow, you don't get it, do you?
Is it bad to say that I really, really love that song at the end?
When I first showed it to my mom, she's like...
That was the worst parts for me, because I was like, man, people actually think the song is good. No, it's not.
when I first played for my mom, she looked at me. She's like, "Is it really bad that I kind of like that song?"
But I feel like that kind of helped to make the point, because it was like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
There's a lot of catchy songs out there, but let's not be singing songs in worship just because they're catchy.
Yeah,
let's write songs that actually mean something.
That and the slide skipping and ending up in the wrong part.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part.
A wonderful piece of humor, but you know, I didn't really realize. Is that a washing machine?
Sorry, you're cutting out for a second.
Is that a washing machine? Oh, it's gone.
No, it's an exercise machine.
I don't think that episode, like, it really hit home to me exactly how true it was until just a short while after, and my mom was listening to a list of the new top worship songs that just come out, looking for new songs for church, and she was listening to one Hillsong song, and for about 10 seconds, and she skipped to the next one, and there was also a Hillsong, and she made some comment about like, okay, here's the next one. I was like, wait, you just changed songs? And
Yeah.
I literally did not realize she had switched to the next song because they were so similar. They seamlessly went into the next song, and I couldn't even tell it was a different song.
Yeah, and probably one of the most disturbing things from that video was the amount of emails and Facebook messages I got, people asking for the lyrics and the chords so that way they could play it as a legitimate worship song at their church.
Wow.
Because they thought, okay, this is a real worship song. This is how you write a real worship song. This is. They didn't get that it was satire. They thought this was just a legitimate, like a real.
But you have to think, for all the people who see things like that, they're probably, you know, in that mindset already.
Right.
Whereas there are the people who see that and they actually get the point and grow from that. And so that's the important thing, I think, to take away from when you do something like that.
Right.
Through all of this and all the popularity it was getting, I was amazed thinking about the fact that you played this song for me on your guitar over Skype before the video came out, and I was like, I got like the exclusive listen to it before, you know, the other billion people heard it.
Did I send you the original recording of it, like that I posted on my SoundCloud recently?
No. You played it live for me when you did it.
Okay.
I haven't heard any of that.
So I actually read it to you.
Yeah, you pulled out your guitar thing. You actually like sang. You did the thing. You did like the number one, this and this and this, and you like sang stuff, and then you sang the song at the end and everything.
Yeah,
did the whole thing.
Yeah, the original. I don't know like why I decided to do it. I wasn't even writing it with Blimy Cow in mind when I wrote the script.
I was just about to ask you that. If they asked you to write that, or
it was just it's been a conversation that I've had, you know, over the years with my sisters, because we're all musicians, and it's just been like, wow, this is terrible. Look, they're playing the same 4 chords. So it's just kind of an on-running joke between us. And I can't remember what song I heard, but I was just like, man, I'm tired of this. This is so terrible. So I just wrote this, you know, this list of all the things that I saw that were wrong with it, and kind of tried to be a little satirical in there. And usually just anything I end up writing, I end up forgetting that I'm supposed to be serious and just make it all a joke.
Yeah.
So I made this whole script, and then I played it for my mom, and I was just like, "Isn't this funny?" And she's like, "Wow, that's so mean, but it's hilarious." And she's like, "I don't know who you'd show that to, because I think a lot of people would be offended." I was like, "Wait, that's just like Blimey Cow videos."
What a perfect fit.
So I Skyped up Josh, and I was like, "Hey, dude, I wrote this script, and I did the same thing that I did for you, Devin." And he's like, "Dude, that's hilarious. Let's make it into a Messy Mondays video." I was like, "You know, I thought you might say that." Here's the script. I recorded a version of it. You can see how long it is and try it out. And you know, it worked as far as length. So they made a few. Obviously, I don't know if you listened to my SoundCloud version of it. That was the original script.
No,
so they made a few edits to the script just to kind of make it a little bit more Blimy Cowish.
Mm-hmm.
And then they released it, I think, about a week later, and it obviously did pretty well.
Yeah, it was okay.
You should go grab your
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab my charger in a minute. So this was a question sent into us, and I actually had to look up what this stands for. What VST plugins do you use when you're making music?
I do not use VST plugins because I use Pro Tools, and you have to have a converter to use VST. I believe that the name for I always forget the letters for them. I think it's
AIO.
Yes, it's AIO.
AAC.
AAC.
I don't know. We're talking about audio things, and that's the first audio thing that came to my mind. I doubt that's
AAC. It's an audio format, I'm pretty sure, but it starts with an A. I forget what the other type of plugin. But I use the kind that the Pro Tools, like it's a not as many different programs use it, but I only use the stuff. I only use the plugins that came with Pro Tools, as well as a few other separate programs. Like I have Melodyne that I use for tuning, as well as I use the same, or at least one of the programs that John Campbell uses for music. It's called East West Symphony Orchestra, and it's Silver Edition. So that's all the software I have, just the stuff that came with Pro Tools, and then those 2 other programs.
Did you get to learn a whole lot of cool music stuff when you did that interview with John Campbell for the Scoopcast?
A little bit. I mean, obviously, the Scoopcast, the interviews are pretty heavily edited.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the conversations we had there was just me and John talking for a long time. Then Kevin's like, "Okay, let's." I was like, "No, Kevin, we're talking about music stuff. Don't get in the way here."
Yeah. Well, when I was listening to that interview, I could just tell that there was probably like a whole lot of time where you two were just going on and on about all the intricacies of music design and stuff.
Yeah, we had some good times there, and then
I'm gonna go run and grab my charger.
Okay,
Keep on saying what you were saying.
Oh, I was gonna sing the Jeopardy song for a second.
Oh.
He's gone.
You can do that still if you want. I'll listen.
Okay. Well, no, I feel like I'm being put on the spot.
Okay.
I'm
sorry. So I'll ask the next question then, I guess. How did you first become a part of Elizabeth Crim?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's obviously a more recent musical endeavor that I've worked on with a few of my friends here in North Carolina. Well, not here. I'm currently in Canada. But,
yeah.
Woo. High five.
Yeah. Canadian Odysseans.
Here, let me snap when we would be hitting.
There we go.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry. Elizabeth Crim. I met my friend Taylor. We met at the first day of school. We have a thing before school called immersion. And it's basically just a retreat for 3 days where we go up into the mountains and have to spend some time in worship and getting to know each other. So it's really great. But during one of the worship sets where they were playing some music, I heard him. He obviously it's a hardcore band. He was screaming during the sets, and I was like, "Hey, he's cool. He likes hardcore music." So afterwards, I just went up and was like, "Hey, dude, you want to go start a band?" And he's like, "Dude, I have been praying that God would send me somebody to start a band with." And I was like, "Oh, I was just joking, but..."
Yeah.
So, but we started a band anyways, and I met his other friend, Matt. They had kind of been talking about starting a band for quite a while, and we just kind of hit it off. We met our other two friends who are involved with the band now, Chris and Clint, later on, and it just kind of ended up working out. I wrote music for the band, and because they all really like the genre, but Taylor's just a vocalist, and Matt he plays bass, but he isn't really. He only started playing bass, I think, about 2 years ago. So he's really great at bass, but he hasn't really expanded beyond that as far as writing a whole lot. Mm-hmm. So they were kind of like just hoping that the guy would send them somebody just like me. And it was great, though, because I was kind of wanting to do something with that genre, and I didn't really have anybody to jam with. So it worked out that I was able to write songs and then have a band to play with, So we've kind of bonded over that, and all the songs have been written about... as us as a band and the stuff that we've gone through as friends and just personally. So it's, they weren't just songs written about me or anything. It's just, It was really even though I was writing this stuff, it was about us as a group. But, it's kind of the concept of the band is that there are, there's quite a few Christian rock bands out there, but we really just wanted to be able to go into the darkest places and be able to play music that totally glorifies God. And, even some more conservative Christians or people who don't like the genre might think, oh, that's just a bunch of kids making ruckus. But, to us, it's worship. To us, it's really a chance to demonstrate the Holy Spirit and the kingdom of God, dark places.
I'm going to go check it out because I actually haven't heard any of it yet.
You may hate it. So, okay. If you have any previous experience with the genre and you like some other bands, then maybe you'll like it.
I like Reliant K.
Okay, it is.
I can't say their name.
No, it's definitely Reliant K.
Okay.
Devin.
Sorry.
Usually you're right about things, but this is one thing that you weren't right about.
I can't say words. If
you don't like Elizabeth Crim, check out BtnMshr.
Okay.
It's a little more accessible style. I thought you would have, being the huge fan of the... I guess we haven't posted on the Ceiling Fan wall about that, but...
I trust your opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's more kind of some dubstep in there and EDM. So, but it's also pretty heavily video game inspired.
I love video games.
Perfect.
I suck at them, but I love them. So.
I was gonna say I do too, but that I feel like that would be too truthful.
So, where did the name Elizabeth Crim come from?
It's actually it's kind of an interesting story. Our lead vocalist Taylor, I believe his grandma's name is Elizabeth, and he kind of came through a series of different dreams that he had about her and about kind of just, you know, his calling to the hardcore scene. But ultimately, the name Elizabeth Crim, meaning like the meaning behind both names, Elizabeth and Crim, actually means violent warrior for God, which is kind of the
that's cool.
I guess the focus of the band is to go out and be warriors for God, which is also, if it kind of ties in because my name Garrett means strong warrior or brave warrior. So also Vandenberg means from the hills. So my entire name means brave warrior from the hill.
That's like Gideon, you're a mountain man.
Exactly.
That was an interesting story. It's a cool name now that I understand it.
Yeah.
Newfound respect for the name.
So, in an act of shameless self-promotion, could you tell us more about your new EP, which you have just released?
Yeah, I mean, I was explaining a little bit about it before as far as the lyrics and stuff. It's pretty punk inspired. Obviously, I grew up listening to Reliant K. They were one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
I've liked a lot of any of the hardcore stuff that kind of drew more inspiration from the punk rock scene. I liked more, like especially Beartooth. I don't know. I feel like any band names I mentioned, you guys aren't going to have heard of, but bands like As Cities Burn, Beartooth, Underoath, Emery, a few other bands like that. I just really
heard of some of them. He says self-defensively.
So, like Blimy Cow talks about As Cities Burn extensively.
Right. So initially, I started making this type of music because I was going to start this sort of fun side project thing with Josh and Jordan, where Josh was going to do some sort of spoken word yelling stuff, and I taught Jordan how to scream over Skype, which was fun.
Turn your mics way down.
Yeah, actually, he went out to his car with his laptop, and so our lead single, "Eat, Sleep, Repeat," that was a song that I wrote for that band that I was going to do with Josh and Jordan. It just ended up working out that they didn't really have time to keep up with it, and I kind of wanted to. I ended up liking the style enough that I wanted to do more with it. So they were like, "Dude, just go on and actually make a real band. We're not really going to be able to do too much with you anyway. So just take what we've written, release it, and then go start a real band." I was like, "No, I think I'm going to do that." And so I've promised Jordan though that if we ever tour in an area that's near him, that he can come up and scream a song or something.
You should get him to do some screaming in Blimey Cow. You should get him to do some screaming in Blimey Cow so the rest of us get to hear it.
Yeah, well,
Just one day you'd be like, hey Jordan, you should do that. Like whisper it somehow to him while he's sleeping so he gets it in his mind so he actually does it on the show.
Him and tell him to go make some video making fun of hardcore bands or something.
And then you can be doing some screamo at the end. How to write a screamo worship song.
But I mean, that's not a wide enough genre.
In 6.66 minutes, if you want to reinforce Christian stereotypes on hardcore music.
There you go. Yeah. So, what was the initial question for that? That was
tell us about the new
information about the EP.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super cool. Go buy it. Actually, you can get it for free if you go to crimandtheband.com.
I'll put the link down there.
Okay.
Send me the link and I'll put it down.
You can get it for free if you go to crimandtheband.com and then share the EP on your Facebook. It won't let you have it for free unless you share it on your Facebook. I made sure that was because I felt like, I want to be able to give it away for free, but I don't want it entirely for free because I also want some promotion. So
yeah.
I figured if you're willing to pay for it, that's awesome. If you want to have it for free, well then at least give us some promotion.
It's good business.
Yeah. So I'm pretty proud of it. You should buy it. Or you should just get it for free. But I mean, I prefer that you buy it because I'm poor and I need money to pay for your school.
Yeah. What a perfect segue into our final question. So from here, where are you hoping to go with your music career / career in general?
I'm just really passionate about the church in general. I would like to go into ministry, though not necessarily in a conventional sense. I'd like to continue as far as music and stuff. I think that'll probably end up being my primary source of income, and so I'm hoping that the business will continue to grow. I've really felt called to discipleship since I was younger. I just really loved the concept of it. There was a few different people that I'd met in my life that were really inspiring to me. But yeah, I plan to continue in music, and hopefully we'll find some success in something that I release. But ultimately, I'm going to keep on releasing stuff just because I like making music and I like sharing it with the world, and I like to work with other musicians. So I'm going to continue doing music, whether it's my primary source of income. Although I feel like I'll probably eventually find some knack where I can make a living. As far as just kind of because I want to be able to support myself to be able to do ministry, I'd like to be able to be part of a church and just be able to pour into different people's lives. I don't necessarily want to be in a paid position, but I want to be there. I want to help people grow in their faith. So that's my passion.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Out of Kevin, I know you do, and Mark and
Lauren.
Lawrence, I cannot talk.
Congratulations to Lauren on getting married.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah. Right? I mean, he just gets married all of a sudden. I mean, not all of a sudden. He's been engaged for a while, but Lauren's married. What?
I found that out an hour ago. Devin just mentioned
Victoria
that, and I'm like,
that.
what? I didn't know that.
He's one of the younger members of the crew and is the only one that's married.
It's so weird how all the people our age are getting married now. I
know.
I can't. People are having babies and they're getting married, and I'm like,
You're the
same age as me.
Yeah.
You can't be doing these things.
Yeah.
So which ones you guys? Well, obviously you plays instruments. I think Kevin might play
Kevin,
bass or
Mark
something like that.
Guitar. Kevin knows how to play probably a bit of bass. Obviously, he had his own hardcore band for a while, so he knows how to scream and sing a little bit. Plays guitar to some extent, although I don't think it's something he does all the time. He kind of fools around on it a bit. So Mark has done a little bit more with the guitar. He also plays trumpet. He's been in, I think, ska band and various other. He's done a lot more obscure things with music. Mark is awesome, but he's been in part of some weird bands. I think I've heard, not weird. I mean, just really creative. Not everybody would get them. So yeah, I guess that would imply weirdness, but good stuff. Not bad. Not bad.
Different.
Weird. So Mark's done a little bit of different instruments. I think the main things that he plays were guitar and trumpet. I think he's probably better at trumpet, though. Obviously, he can sing because the best song on McAllister Park album was the one that he sang in. Well, I wouldn't necessarily... No, yeah, it's definitely the best.
Yeah, Wits End.
Yeah, it's great. It reminds me of, actual bands. I feel like that's the one that could actually... I don't know. It's the most emotional one as well, to me. It feels so real being at your wit's end and then having Wit help you out. It's a beautiful song. And he wrote that one as well. So he does that. Lauren, as far as I know, Lauren doesn't do too much with music. I think he's done a little bit of, a while ago, he was wanting me to help him out. He was making some parody of an Owl City song. But most of the stuff that he's done that I've heard has just been funny raps and things. But I don't think he's gone too far into music other than that.
Other than the singing and stuff that you guys all do.
Right, yeah.
And just to freak everyone out, could you remind everyone how many instruments you can play?
Okay. I can't play anything with my mouth, really. Actually, I can play a little bit of harmonica, but not too many wind instruments or brass or anything. I tried playing trumpet when I was younger. Most stringed instruments I've got a little bit of a handle on, as well as most percussion instruments, and obviously drums are the first instrument that I was into. But yeah, rather than naming particular instruments, probably better to just go by genre.
Just families of the orchestra that you can play.
Yeah, I mean, orchestral instruments, I know a little bit of violin and can play a tiny bit of cello. I wouldn't consider, like, as far as instruments that I'm confident enough to play in bands in, as I could play guitar, drums. I mean, stuff that I have played in bands in anyways. I've played guitar, bass, drums, and various keyboard stuff. Oh, it's officially June.
Yeah.
Oh,
Happy June for you, yeah.
you.
Happy June for you. You're 3 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, but as far as those four, and then singing as well, those are kind of the things that I actually would do on stage. I mean, I've done a few other things, like I could play like glockenspiel and stuff like that, but I feel like that's similar to keys enough that it wouldn't really matter. But
well, I mean, it's not that similar in execution because you're using mallets.
Right, but I'm a drummer though, so
yeah. Okay, yes, touche.
So yeah, I play some instruments for bands. Yeah, the other, well, anything else that I do, because I play with several bands around in Concord, but none of them are really, like, you could look them up online or anything. They're just kind of more local stuff. I play with a lot of different local churches. There's different instruments and stuff, but it's fun. It's good to get together with different Christians and play some good music, worship the Lord.
Yeah.
I love how you and Lauren got on it by, like, making, no offense, but kind of like fools of yourself.
All the new people that are joining the show are just fans of the show who've liked it enough to say, hey, could we help out by doing stuff? I mean, our current guy, I was going to say, you were mentioning, people who could do music on the show. We also have our friend Ben Childs. I've met him. I don't know if you saw the video of us hanging out that we posted, but he's been helping out with the production as well, and he's sort of a producer and is doing a bit of electronic music as well. So that's another member of the team who does music. But yeah, it's just kind of neat though, because Lauren and I have kind of moved on a little bit. Lauren's not really going to be part of the show too much anymore, but I mean, I'm still planning on being part of the show, even though I can't commit that much time to it. But because, we've kind of grown past it, it's starting all over again. We've got at least 4 or 5 new kids who are helping out with the show. And it just continues. I feel like it'll be kind of continue like that for a long time. It's always been Kevin's baby. But, it's a really neat... I owe a lot of what I've done in media to the Ceiling Fan, because it was just kind of that perfect doorway between being professional and not professional.
Yeah.
Where it was professional enough to make it feel legit and feel like I actually had to get stuff done, and there was an audience, so it wasn't just like, doing whatever.
Yeah.
I actually had to learn some things about putting media out and how to deal with fan bases and stuff. But it was unprofessional enough that we could screw things up and it didn't matter that much.
Yeah.
So
which is the perfect transition step.
Exactly. So from there, I was able to start doing other things like Blimey Cow and whatnot. And I just and also because of the many connections that were made through the show, and it's also something that I can just point people to say, hey, I did this. This is,
you have a portfolio.
Right, yeah. And I wouldn't have had that portfolio. I wouldn't have had any recognition at all without the show, even though it is just, a silly show that we make as a bunch of friends. But it's been incredibly helpful to me in learning how to do media in general, and how to make connections, how to socialize with different people, and make sure that you're making. And it's never been like I'm going out trying to make connections so that way I can be successful. But through different connections that God's blessed me with through the Ceiling Fan and different means that way, it's just been. The Ceiling Fan has been one of the biggest means of getting connected with different people who are doing media, mm-hmm. and I thank Kevin a lot of times just for how much it's helped me in my life. It's it's a great show for both the developers and the fans. I feel like I love the Ceiling Fan. It's a great show.
So one last question: what's your favorite Ceiling Fan moment that you are in and aren't in? Or something like that.
Or something like that. I especially liked some of the stuff that we've done with Kurt, like the intern Aaron episodes. I really liked, as far as from a production side, I really liked doing the first episode because I got to do most of the production for that one. For the Foley of Aaron, going scraping himself across the ground and trying to get off the road, I actually went outside and recorded myself dragging myself across the ground. So most of that scene is pretty realistic as far as what the sounds would actually sound like because I was doing those things. So I had a lot of fun with the Foley and the production for that stuff. As far as just like general funniness and stuff I'd like to be in, I liked the I think there was probably 3 different mini-sodes. Because there was the 2 actual mini-sodes, but then there was also the April Fool's episode that Lauren and I made, which was kind of a surprise for Kevin. We made it, and we're like, hey, Kevin, you should let us upload this. And he's like, okay, we don't have an April Fool's episode.
I've quoted that one. I can't... Not that many times, but still, like, our good friend Kevin McCreary, who died in a skiing accident, the vocal cords are the only thing we found left. They will be hung and mounted on a wall.
The mountain climbing / water skiing accident. Yeah, that one was just so much fun to put together. Like, Lauren and I wrote it, like, the night of, and then we put it... I edited it all up together, and... Actually, I think... No, yeah, we both wrote a segment. Lauren wrote the crazy news report thing, and I wrote the other half of it.
Now we can call it Odyssey with Aaron.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. I think we actually ended up writing a lot of it together, but I really appreciate and enjoy writing with Lauren. So we wrote that together and put it together. It was just a load of fun, and I think it not a lot of people thought it was hilarious, I don't think, but I thought it was hilarious. So,
well, that's the important thing, right?
Yeah, I really loved Phil's line because it was back when lots of us were unsure what was going on with him. So it was just like, oh, I'm gonna go call the police, phone myself in. And then you can just hear him in the background. You're like, hello, officer, I'd like to call myself in on, and then you guys start talking over top of it, so you can just hear mumbles. And I was just like, no, I want to know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. So there's that, and then also the various I really loved the episode where Aaron and Lauren wrote hiding.
That one was one of my favorites.
That a lot of people say that was their favorites, and it's one of my favorites as well. I feel like there was a lot of fun humor there with us making fun of how our voices sound similar, even though I don't think they do. And it was just kind of a lot of fun where we got to explore the dynamics between Aaron and James, because James was always one of my favorite characters. And
me too.
It was so much fun getting to do stuff with him. That I really appreciated the scenes that I got to do where it was Aaron and James talking together. The stuff with Aaron and Kurt I think is really funny as well. But Aaron and James was a lot of fun.
In the last episode, I remember I was trying to explain it to my friend, like the part where Kurt was just like taking the guy's wallet, and he's just like, I think he thought I was hitting on him, but I totally wasn't. I love how like defensive he is.
We actually got a lot of flack for that online, or not a lot of flack, but we had a few people commenting saying, I'm not going to listen to the Ceiling Fan anymore because they shouldn't be even referencing the fact that homosexuality exists. And I was like, you shouldn't be listening to the Ceiling Fan if you can't get that was a joke.
And I was trying to explain that to my friend, and then they're just like staring at me kind of like, what? And then at the end I'm like, so do you get it? Isn't that hilarious? And I'm like killing myself laughing, and they're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a very specific type of humor that either you think it's totally hilarious or you're just like, I don't get it.
And then I'm just like, oh, never mind, you'll have to listen to it.
Victoria and I share that humor when I found out that you shared that same sense of humor, because when it can be few and far between sometimes finding people with that sense of humor.
And I feel, I've talked about this with Kevin before, but I feel like the best media, it has very specific audience. If you try to make your stuff likable by everybody, it's just going to be like, oh, it's okay, it's kind of good. But if you really want to have a really successful show, or just any sort of product you're putting out, you're going to really cater towards a specific set of people, and those people are going to absolutely love it. Yeah. And the people that don't like it are actually going to hate it.
Mm-hmm. I think now we've probably gotten off topic enough that we should probably turn things back over to regular current day Devin and Victoria so they can close up this episode.
All right.
So let's zip that back over this way.
You totally hit my hat up.
And we're back. So hopefully you all enjoyed the interview. We had a great time. Garrett is always a very fun person to talk to. And it wasn't exactly your first time talking to Garrett, but it basically was.
I talked to him briefly before. We said hi.
Yeah, whereas I talk to him a lot more frequently. But yeah, he's a super cool guy, as you guys now know. So, thank you to Mr. Witsend for sending in questions. Mr. Witsend, I should say, to be precise. Just to clarify, there is an R in there. Thank you to any non-regular Oddcast people who watched this episode, whether you be fans of Blimy Cow, the Scoopcast, Elizabeth Crim, or the Ceiling Fan, or your friends and family of Garrett, or what have you. If you're not a regular member of this podcast, but you stopped by for Garrett's sake, then thank you for joining us for this short, not really actually that short time. And
next episode, episode 36, strange to think we've done that many, is going to be a review.
What a surprise!
So, the Adventures in Odyssey, I always say the name wrong.
Yes, you do.
The Odyssey Adventure Club episode that we're going to be reviewing next month, week, next
2 weeks,
2 weeks.
I guess, yeah.
Next time. I'll just say next time.
That's what I do.
Next episode will be Mission Unaccomplished Part 2. And I get to choose the episode. So probably all of you guys have already guessed which episode I chose because I mentioned it being my favorite Jared episode.
And I know that you remember everything we've ever said on the past 50 hours of this podcast, after all.
Yep. And all my favorite episodes are Jared episodes. That's not a joke. It's kind of sad if you think. I don't find it sad. Some people might. Devin probably does.
Go on, just tell them.
Is Gloobers. So that'll be fun for all you video game fans out there.
I am personally not a huge fan of this episode, so
this episode is going to be one of our first debate episodes.
Well, not really. I mean, like Christmas Conundrum,
yeah,
I love.
Our second one.
But Victoria didn't like it so much. So it's interesting. I mean, normally we have we review episodes because we really like them, and normally we both really like an episode when we do. So it's not very often that we get to disagree over something. So it'll be interesting.
So I actually get to go into reasons why Gloobers is my favorite episode, and Devin gets to say why he doesn't like it that much.
Yes, assuming I can come up with some actual concrete reasons.
Me too. Okay.
This will be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be
hard. Until then, that's been Victoire.
And that's been Devon.
And you've been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Bye, guys.
I wish I had like a party popper there. We'll save him for the anniversary episode. It's almost here. It's almost first year anniversary. Oh, it's going to be exciting. So, until then, goodbye.
Bye.